I have all these mentors who, you know, it's not the traditional sense of mentor. Like it was like, hey, you're gonna mentor me. It's just like we spent so much time, and I've learned so much from them that they just I've given them that title, and they've accepted it, you know. But I met Ellen when I started grad school in 2006, and then we've just been like kicking it ever since. And then I became a member of the Actors Studio, and she's like the president of the Actors Studio, and you know, all that history. And she's, you know, it's Ellen. She has an Oscar for she has an Oscar. She did you probably know her from The Exorcist or Requiem for a Dream. She's the old lady in Requiem for a Dream, and tons of other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's strange because I find myself these days that like I hang with a lot of older people. You know, because I love learning. So I just sit down and I'm like, just give me everything you got. Like, go lay it out. I want all that like experience and knowledge and wisdom. Anything that you want to share, I'm willing to learn. And that's not only for elders. That's with anybody. I love learning. So anyone, whether it's a child, a crackhead, or whatever.
Like what you just said, you know, I just put the dots together because you initially talked about yourself in a leadership role, a director. You teaching actors how to be in front of the camera, how to dialogue, or whatever the case may be in your field. But now you're also talking about being a student of the game, you know. So it seems like you're not just this one way. You have the ability to also be a student, to learn, to engage, and to be receptive to what another person has to offer you.
Yeah, well, that was a huge part of my work, and I think that's one of the strongest things I offer as a collaborator. That's why people love working with me, because one, I'm not afraid to tell you I don't know something. You know, there was a time period when people would be like, yeah, you know this, and I'm like, yeah. But because I was afraid to admit that I didn't know something, because I thought that then I would look unintelligent or people would judge me, you know what I mean? So I always pretended to know shit that I didn't know. And then the front, right, fronting. And then I got to a point where it was like, man, that's a lot of work. And it's a lot easier for you to just tell me something I don't know and I can learn it right there. And so I would turn to people.
I'm sorry, please continue. I cut you off.
I would turn, like people would be like, hey, you know this? And I'd be like, no, I don't. And I would actively watch them come alive with excitement of being able to teach me something. And then it was a win-win because I was learning something and they were excited to be taking part in my growth as a human. So our connection immediately changed. I empowered them and I empowered myself.
So it seems like there's a lot more value with getting to know yourself, being yourself, because it allows for more to come into your life. In this case, your mentors now, you're surrounded by these uber successful people that are in a different demographic than you if you take the actor studio away.
Oh, yeah.
Now, actor studio, a common ground that you have with these individuals, and now you're developing relationships that, you know, could you have imagined this 20-25 years ago when you first, you know, began this journey of self-introspection and growth?
Never. You know what I mean? Well, you know what's funny, man? I've always had the images. We read a lot about visualization and stuff, and I've always had images that were so outrageous to the lifestyle I was in that you know what I mean? Like we would be on the block. I remember being on the block hustling. We out there drinking, smoking, hustling, and meanwhile I'm having visions of like walking the steps to pick up an Oscar. You know what I mean? Like I would have dreams that weren't even in the same like spectrum of the world. Yeah, it was crazy. But somehow I've slowly I began to live into those visions.
So you have a bunch of thoughts going through my head with what you're telling me, because it sounds like, let me ask you a question. Let me throw it back at you. Do you have a spiritual value? Do you have any religion? Do you have any type of relationship that's more than yourself that you can attribute part of your growth too?
I mean, I believe in God, like essence, source, something bigger than us. I believe in the connection, you know, of everyone. I think that we're all connected, you know. And I practice that, like treating people the way I want to be treated, seeing, you know, them and myself. But years ago, man, I decided that my religion was love. And I think that that's the core principle that exists in all the religions around the world. It's all about love, you know what I mean? And some of them I think they get manipulated and stuff, but I just like when I gave myself permission to be okay with the word love, like without judging myself. Like we grew up, you know, I grew up where it was like things were handled with violence, you know what I mean? And men didn't like hug and we didn't say I love you and we didn't do stuff like that. But the moment I gave myself permission to like live into something that I actually felt in myself that I used to feel ashamed for, things started to change, you know what I mean? Like my connection to people, my ability to show vulnerability to people, you know what I mean? To let another man see me cry, to tell another man that I love him, you know what I mean? I think it's always been a little easier with women because like that's almost like the roles that we were like trained to believe in, you know? But I remember me and you talking about like accepting our feminine side and that ability to live into that. So like that's my religion, and that's my spirituality, bro. Like the core essence of everything is love. I think that there's a reason that the heart is the first organ that's formed, you know what I mean? Like that's, love is love, man. So
Yeah, the reason why I asked you that because you were talking about being on a block uh, and having visions that were completely outside of your experience, you know, and it led me to think about that connectivity, you know, and that ability to be calling ourselves to purpose. If we just let go and listen to the call, we can start taking progressive steps to where we need to be, even though we don't know where we're going, if that makes sense. It
yeah.
sounds like that ability to listen, not with your ears, more with your heart or with your emotions, and feel your way to where you are now. And, you know, that's why I asked you about a higher power or spiritualism or religion, because I thought of that.
It's all that and stubbornness, man. How many times people told me that my shit was unrealistic? But luckily, I just don't care. Like I'm like, you know, I remember having a conversation with someone. They were like, "Yo, you got to be realistic." I'm like, "Why? What has that ever done for me?" I'm like, why would I be? If I was realistic, I'd still be on the block selling drugs because everybody told me I could never make movies. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a time to be realistic, and there's a time to just be like, man, get out of here. That's your shit. You know, don't force your beliefs about life onto me, man. I'm gonna make my own decisions, and if I fail, I'm gonna fail trying to be who I want to be. I'm not gonna fail trying to be you. That's that's silly to me, you know. Well, I'm gonna put
Yeah,
all that energy into that.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and that ties into everything that I do, man. Like everything that we're creating, everything that I create, it's tied into everything that we're talking about, right? Like we're creating this series called Wonder. And you know, Wonder short. It's a short film we shot about a 12-year-old boy growing up in the hood, questioning where he fits in today's traditional gender system, right? And and in order to like write that series, like this kid has to ask a lot of questions about his life and what he feels about his life and how that's in direct conflict with the environment that he's growing up in, right? So when you're growing up in the hood, we got a lot of like toxic masculinity. You know, it's like men don't cry, you know, men handle shit with violence, women belong in the kitchen, or you know, you see these gender reveals and it's like if the balloon pops and it's blue, everybody's buying sports equipment and stuff like that, you know what I mean? GI Joes or whatever.
How did you make Wonder challenge those social constructs?
Well, we without giving away like the the things in the movie and stuff, right? It's
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry
yeah.
about that.
No, it's all good. It's all good because I think it's something that we're all going through. You know what I mean? But it's as you watch the series, you'll see like his progression in going against that, like you know, having to like fight or not want to fight or wanting to dress like a girl, like a boy dressing like a girl or stuff like that, and how that would like could lead to major problems in the streets out in this environment, you know. Like I remember for a long time, like I just considered pink to be a girl's color. Now I got a pink shirt that I love. I actually think baby pink might be my favorite color right now. There's something about it.
It's called salmon now. It's not called pink no more when guys wear it. It's called salmon.
Okay. well, well,
Back to that social structure, weaning his way back in, to, you just, I wear pink. No, I don't wear pink. I wear salmon, just to keep the
right,
bravado.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what I mean, right? Like normally, I'm like, we didn't grow up like now. Most of the time, when I see my peoples, like we be like, "Yo, I love you, bro. Or, I love you, king." Even that, like the sense of calling another man king, people you can see when people at first they're like, "Oh, word." Oh, I like that, and they kind of ease into it. But the initial reaction is kind of like, and it's also funny, like I realized like I'm now in my life where I can compliment another dude. I can compliment, like see him be like, oh man, yo, that shirt looks really good on you. And then they're like, but now, like well, at least my people's, they so used to me that's like, word man, good looking. You know what I mean? Like we're easing away from that, and we can express and we can discuss things that we couldn't do. I remember me and you having conversations 20 years ago that we were like, man, people would think we were crazy if they heard us discussing metaphysics and all this spirituality. And now look at us. Now you turn anywhere and people having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So we've been on the call for like 50 minutes. You got a couple more minutes left in you, or you got things you got to get into, or?
Nah, I'm with you, big bro.
All right. So you were talking about Brothers Keeper. You were explaining how the dynamics of that were two brothers, one, justifying the need to take care of the other, which wasn't necessarily true, but he was just justifying his behavior. Do you want to keep going with the Brother Keeper?
Well, I mean, I just think that it's something that I'm proud of because it's ours, man, and it was successful, and whether it needs work, because I've never I don't have a project that I finished that I feel like it's done. I'm always tweaking. I'm always making adjustments. I'm always that's the other part of that, like that analyzation. I'm always analyzing. I'm always processing. I'm always working.
Judgment now, right? You do it with less. You do it with less judgment than you would have done in the past.
Well, yeah. Because as I'm analyzing, it's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's about what's the next step in my growth, right? So it's not like I'm like, oh, I failed that. I'm like, oh, I would do this because this adjustment might reveal this. Oh, I think if I did this, it would help this message land, And I'm still not saying like I got it wrong. I'm just saying it's more like saying yes and yes, that worked, and I could do this too. Oh man, and so it's all like exciting to me because then I'm like, all right, so the next time I shoot, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna take this into consideration, and that's how I continue to grow. Whereas I feel like when I judge myself or I'm like, oh, I got that wrong, I'm kind of taking a step back because it stunts my creativity, man. Then I start trying to get it right, and that's not fun.
Sounds like when I hear what you're saying, it sounds like trying to be right, you become rigid. You're trying to make it perfect, and your breathing is a little shallower, and you're not as tense. Your shoulders tense up, and you're not as fluid as you would naturally be if you just let go. And sometimes letting go can be hard because letting go is an aspect of vulnerability, which is in contradiction to the control, that need for control. I need to at least control my environment because that would make me feel safe. But now you're telling me with what you do and how you've grown and how you developed, the things that you've done were counterintuitive. You know, even though your body was saying walk the safe path, you were like, you know what? I'm gonna walk the unbeaten path.
Mm-hmm.
And there's value in that, you're saying, because you develop, first of all, your own way of being that's not necessarily attached to what somebody else thinks of you. And you've also, sounds like you also come into your own purpose in life. You know, a lot of people, you know, from my observation, that's one of the biggest struggles is finding meaning. You know, you think of A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and he talks about, you know, that need to define yourself and have purpose in life. You know, and when I think of those two things, that beaten path that you're walking, well, now it's not beaten no more. Now it seems like you paved it in cobblestone.
Nice and smooth, baby.
Yeah, nice and smooth. I'm thinking of resiliency there. You know, you took, you know, that path that you're on now, that it's, you know where you're at now. You know who you are now. It wasn't always like that though. So it had to take some type of resiliency, right? To overcome that burden of uncertainty, stress, or whatever comes with walking your own path.
Oh, yeah, no, there's days, bro. There's still days where I wake up sad. You know what I mean? Where I gotta have me and depression be sitting right next to, or he'd be like sitting on my back. I'll be like, the world feel heavy, you know, cause there's fear, there's uncertainty in chasing your dreams and going after that. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of criticism that doesn't even have to come from you, that comes from the outside world, you know? And you got to build that resilience, you know, saying like, it's important for me to know why I do it. So I'm like, yo, I do it for me. So if you don't like it, that's cool. You don't have to. I'm no longer trying to get everybody to like what I do. The people that's gonna like it and understand it are gonna like it and understand it, man. But like I'm following my heart, man, and I'm doing what's right for me. You know, Gabe always, when you ask him about Brother's Keeper, he always says it's about letting go of who you think you have to be so that you can be who you're meant to be. You know, and that's part of it, you know, me releasing and not like letting other people's visions or expectations of life become mine or stop me. It's just easy, man. So some days you gotta be resilient, man. And so for me, it's like, so when I wake up and I'm depressed and the world feels dark, I have this thing that I always say, and it always pops into my head, and it's faith only counts in the darkness. So if I really believe in what I'm doing, this is the time I gotta prove it. Like, it's easy to believe when I'm winning awards.
Satori, success.